History is one of the best things to learn from many smart people. Many wars and other things trough out. History, there were many mistakes you can learn from and many smart decisions too, as you already can tell. We are again on the topic of the history today. Today we will cover the First Punic War, the Second Punic War, and the Third Punic War. These wars were held against two greatest powers of the time, Rome and Carthage. For me, history is a very important lesson, and I like to cover it. Last couple of videos are at history, and in the future ones we will cover some wars and generals again, but later we will catch up to present. This is a very exciting war, so let's start. The First Punic War was fought between Rome and Carthage from 264 BC to 241 BC. It was the first of three wars fought by these two powers, which ultimately led to the downfall of Carthage and the rise of Rome as the dominant power in the Mediterranean. The immediate cause of the war was a dispute over the island of Sicily, which was then a rich and strategically important territory. The Carthaginians had controlled Sicily for centuries, but the Romans saw it as an opportunity to expand their own territory and wealth. The war began with a Roman invasion of Sicily, which was initially successful. However, the Carthaginians responded by sending a large fleet to the island, and they were able to defeat the Roman navy in several key battles. This gave Carthage control of the seas around Sicily, and they were able to hold off the Roman invasion for several years. In 260 BC, the Romans decided to build a navy to challenge Carthage's dominance of the seas. They copied a captured Carthaginian ship and built a fleet of over 100 warships. They then defeated the Carthaginian fleet in a naval battle off the coast of Sicily in 260 BC, using a boarding bridge to turn the naval battle into a land battle, where the Romans had the advantage. With control of the seas, the Romans were able to launch successful invasions of both Sicily and North Africa, and by 241 BC the Carthaginians were forced to sue for peace. The Treaty of Lutatius was signed, which forced Carthage to give up Sicily and pay a large indemnity to Rome. The First Punic War was a long and costly conflict, with both sides suffering heavy losses. It also established Rome as a major naval power and marked the beginning of its expansion outside of Italy. Some of the bigger battles in this war were Battle of Drepana 249 BC. This was a naval battle fought off the coast of Sicily. The Carthaginians, under the command of Adherbal and Hamilcar Barca, defeated the Romans and gained control of the sea. Battle of Panormus 251 BC. This was a land battle fought in Sicily. The Romans, under the command of the consul Lucius Caecilius Metellus, defeated the Carthaginians. Battle of Bagradas 255 BC. This was a land battle fought in North Africa. The Romans, under the command of Marcus Atilius Regulus, were defeated by the Carthaginians. Battle of Ecnomus 256 BC. This was a naval battle fought off the coast of Sicily. The Romans, under the command of the consuls Marcus Atilius Regulus and Lucius Manlius Bulso, defeated the Carthaginians and gained control of the sea. Battle of Tunis 255 BC. This was a land battle fought in North Africa. The Carthaginians, under the command of Xanthippus, defeated the Romans. Battle of Mylae 260 BC. This was a naval battle fought near the coast of Sicily. The Romans, under the command of Gaius Duilius, defeated the Carthaginians and gained control of the sea. Battle of Agrigentum 262 BC. This was the first major battle of the war fought in Sicily. The Romans, under the command of the consul Lucius Postumius Megillus, defeated the Carthaginians. The First Punic War between Rome and Carthage was marked by the leadership of several notable generals from both sides. Here are some of the most significant generals of the First Punic War. Hamilcar Barca. Hamilcar was a Carthaginian general who led his army in several key battles during the First Punic War. He is known for his strategic brilliance and his efforts to rebuild the Carthaginian army after their losses in the war. Marcus Atilius Regulus. Regulus was a Roman consul who led his army to several victories in the First Punic War, including the Battle of Ecnomus in 256 BC. He was later captured by the Carthaginians and died in captivity. Gaius Lutatius Catullus. Catullus was a Roman consul who led the Roman navy to victory in the Battle of the Aegates Islands in 241 BC, which led to the end of the First Punic War. Xanthippus. Xanthippus was a Greek mercenary who fought on the side of Carthage in the First Punic War. He is known for his victory over the Romans at the Battle of Tunis in 255 BC. Lucius Caecilius Metellus. Metellus was a Roman consul who led his army to victory in the Battle of Panormus in 251 BC, which helped to secure Roman control over Sicily. Hannibal Gisco. Hannibal was a Carthaginian general who fought against the Romans in Sicily and North Africa during the First Punic War. He is known for his leadership at the Battle of Bagradas in 255 BC. These generals played a significant role in the outcome of the First Punic War and shaped. The end of the war was marked by several key events. The Battle of the Aegates Islands, 241 BC. This was a naval battle fought near the Aegates Islands off the coast of Sicily. The Roman navy, under the command of Gaius Lutatius Catulus, defeated the Carthaginian fleet, which led to the end of the war. The Treaty of Lutatius, 241 BC. After the Battle of the Aegates Islands, the Romans and Carthaginians signed a peace treaty that ended the First Punic War. The treaty was named after the Roman consul Gaius Lutatius Catulus, who negotiated the terms of the peace. The terms of the treaty Under the terms of the treaty, Carthage was required to cede Sicily to Rome, pay a large.
The treaty also required both sides to return prisoners of war and provide for the safe passage of merchants. The end of the First Punic War marked the beginning of Rome's dominance in the Mediterranean world. The victory over Carthage gave Rome control over Sicily, which was the first province that Rome acquired outside of Italy. The war also established Rome as a naval power and paved the way for its expansion into other parts of the Mediterranean. After this there was a little peacetime between Rome and Carthage. But not long after the Carthage came back for revenge. The Second Punic War was fought between 218 BC and 201 BC, primarily between Rome and Carthage. The war began when the Carthaginian general Hannibal invaded Italy by crossing the Alps with his army and elephants, catching the Romans by surprise. Hannibal won several major victories against the Romans, including at the Battle of Cannae in 216 BC, where he defeated a much larger Roman army. However, Hannibal was unable to capture Rome itself and was eventually forced to return to Africa to defend Carthage against Roman invasion. Meanwhile, the Roman general Scipio Africanus launched an invasion of North Africa, which forced Hannibal to return to defend Carthage. At the Battle of Zama in 202 BC, Scipio Africanus defeated Hannibal's army and effectively ended the war. The terms of the peace settlement were harsh for Carthage, which was forced to pay a huge indemnity and cede much of its territory to Rome. The war significantly expanded Roman power and influence in the Mediterranean world and marked the beginning of Rome's rise as a superpower. Overall, the Second Punic War was a significant conflict in ancient history and had a lasting impact on the Roman Republic, Carthage, and the wider Mediterranean world. The war was sparked by a dispute over the city of Saguntum, which was allied with Rome but was also located in Carthaginian territory. However, there were several underlying causes that led to the outbreak of the war. The First Punic War, which lasted from 264 to 241 BCE, had resulted in Rome gaining control of Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica, and becoming a dominant power in the Mediterranean. Carthage had suffered a significant loss of territory and wealth, and the Carthaginian leader, Hamilcar Barca, had sworn revenge against Rome. Expansion of Carthage in Spain. After the First Punic War, Carthage turned its attention to Spain, which was rich in resources and offered new opportunities for trade and expansion. Carthaginian general Hasdrubal Barca, the son-in-law of Hamilcar, established a strong presence in Spain and expanded Carthaginian territory. Rome's fear of Carthaginian power. Rome was concerned about Carthaginian expansion and the threat it posed to Roman interests in the Mediterranean. Rome had also formed alliances with several cities in Spain, including Saguntum, which had been under siege by Carthage. Hannibal's invasion of Italy. In 218 BCE, Hannibal, the son of Hamilcar Barca, led an invasion of Italy, crossing the Alps with an army of elephants and infantry. Hannibal won several major victories against Roman armies, including the Battle of Cannae, but was eventually defeated by Rome. In summary, the Second Punic War was caused by a combination of factors, including Carthaginian resentment over the outcome of the First Punic War, Roman fears about Carthaginian expansion, and Hannibal's invasion of Italy. Hannibal Barca was a general from Carthage who is best known for his leadership during the Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BCE, against Rome. Hannibal is known for his famous military campaign where he led his army, including elephants, across the Alps in 218 BCE to attack Rome from the north. This was a bold and unexpected move that caught the Romans off guard and caused them significant losses. Hannibal won several major battles against the Romans, including the Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE, where his army defeated a much larger Roman force. Hannibal's military tactics were innovative and effective, making him one of the greatest military commanders in history. He was known for his ability to adapt to changing circumstances on the battlefield and for his use of deception and surprise to gain an advantage over his enemies. Despite his military successes, Hannibal was eventually defeated by Rome, which proved to be too powerful and resilient an adversary. Hannibal went into exile after the war, and his eventual fate is unknown. Overall, Hannibal's leadership and military tactics during the Second Punic War have made him a legendary figure in history, and his legacy continues to inspire military leaders and strategists today. The Second Punic War ended with the defeat of Carthage by Rome in 201 BCE. After years of intense fighting, the Roman army under the command of Scipio Africanus invaded North Africa, the home territory of Carthage. Hannibal, who had been recalled from Italy to defend Carthage, was defeated by Scipio in the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE. Following the defeat, Carthage was forced to sign a peace treaty with Rome known as the Treaty of Zama. This treaty imposed heavy reparations on Carthage, including the payment of a large sum of money to Rome, the surrender of all Carthaginian territories outside of Africa, and the surrender of all Carthaginian war elephants. The treaty also prohibited Carthage from declaring war on any other nation without Rome's permission, effectively making Carthage a client state of Rome. This marked the end of Carthaginian power in the Mediterranean and solidified Rome's dominance in the region. The aftermath of the Second Punic War had long-lasting consequences for both Rome and Carthage. For Rome, the war established it as the dominant power in the Mediterranean and paved the way for its eventual expansion into an empire. For Carthage, the war was a devastating blow that left it weak and vulnerable to future attacks. The harsh terms of the Treaty of Zama also fueled resentment and bitterness among the Carthaginians, which would ultimately lead to the Third Punic War and the complete destruction of Carthage by Rome. The Third Punic War was the final conflict between Rome and Carthage, which took place from 149 BC to 146 BC. The war was sparked by growing tensions between Rome and Carthage, as well as by the ambition of some Roman politicians to eliminate the Carthaginian threat once and for all. In 149 BC, the Roman consul Lucius Marcius Censorinus demanded that Carthage surrender all of its weapons and declare war on any nation only with Rome's permission. This demand was a clear violation of Carthage's sovereignty, and the Carthaginians refused to comply. The Romans used this as a pretext for war and launched an attack on Carthage. The initial Roman assault was repelled by the Carthaginians, who managed to hold their ground for several years. However, in 146 BC, the Roman general Scipio Aemilianus besieged and captured the city of Carthage. The Romans then systematically destroyed the city, killing or enslaving its inhabitants and burning the city to the ground. This act marked the end of the Punic Wars and the final defeat of Carthage. The Third Punic War was a brutal conflict that resulted in the complete destruction of one of the ancient world's great cities. It was also a significant turning point in Roman history, as it marked the beginning of Rome's transition from a regional power to a global empire. The war was sparked by a dispute between Carthage and its neighbor Numidia, which was a Roman ally. Rome used this as a pretext to declare war on Carthage, despite the fact that Carthage had complied with all of Rome's demands regarding the Numidian dispute. The Roman general Scipio Aemilianus led the siege of Carthage, which lasted for 3 years. The city was heavily fortified and well defended, but eventually the Romans breached its walls and conquered the city. The Romans then proceeded to systematically destroy the city, burning it to the ground and sowing salt into the surrounding fields to ensure that nothing would grow there again. The Carthaginian people were either killed or sold into slavery, and Carthage was erased from the map. The Third Punic War is often seen as a symbol of Rome's ruthless and uncompromising attitude towards its enemies, and the destruction of Carthage is considered one of the greatest acts of genocide in ancient history. The biggest battle of the war was the Siege of Carthage, which lasted for several years and resulted in the complete destruction of the city. However, there were also several other significant battles that took place during the conflict. Here are some of the most notable ones. Battle of Nepharis, 147 BC. This was the first major battle of the war, in which the Roman army, led by Scipio Aemilianus, defeated the Carthaginian army under Hasdrubal. The battle took place near the city of Nepharis, and the Roman victory paved the way for their eventual siege of Carthage. Battle of the Great Plains, 146 BC. This was a decisive battle that took place near the city of Carthage. The Carthaginian army, led by the general, Diogenes, attempted to break through the Roman siege lines and was met by the Roman army, led by Scipio Aemilianus. The Romans emerged victorious, and this battle effectively ended the war. Battle of the City, 146 BC. This was the final battle of the war, in which the Romans breached the walls of Carthage and sacked the city. The Carthaginians fought bravely, but they were vastly outnumbered and outmatched by the Roman army, and the city was left in ruins. These were some of the biggest battles in the Third Punic War, and they played a crucial role in shaping the outcome of the conflict. The war culminated in the siege and destruction of Carthage, marking the end of the Carthaginian Empire. The Roman general Scipio Aemilianus besieged Carthage for 3 years, gradually wearing down the city's defenses. In 146 BCE, the Romans breached the city's walls and engaged in brutal street-to-street fighting. The Carthaginians fought fiercely, but they were no match for the Roman legions. The city was sacked and burned, and the surviving inhabitants were sold into slavery. According to legend, as the city burned, the Roman general Scipio wept at the sight of the destruction, lamenting that such a great city had fallen. He reportedly quoted a line from Homer's Iliad, "A day will come when sacred Troy shall perish, and Priam and his people with him," comparing the fall of Carthage to the fall of the ancient city of Troy. With the destruction of Carthage, Rome became the dominant power in the Mediterranean world, and its influence would continue to spread for centuries to come. The end of the Third Punic War marked a major turning point in Roman history, and it had profound consequences for the ancient world as a whole. At the end, this was a bloody series of wars in which the Rome came out as the winner. This was one of the bigger human conflicts in the early ages, and we will cover others too. I hope you liked this one and that you will like the next one. Remember, keep being stoic.